local index is firmer at midday trade, but stocks are set to trade cautiously this week amid ongoing concerns over global interest rates and inflation. Petri Redelinghuys is the trader and founder of Herenya Capital Advisors. He joins us now to talk us through the latest market moves. A happy Monday to you. It would seem that we're starting off on a green note, which is a happy note on the markets. Talk us through the latest moves.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's definitely, we can say happy Monday for the first time in a while with green stock markets, right? US had a fairly decent session on Friday night. Well, I say decent. If the market in the US, the S&P 500 particularly, fell really hard, but in the last sort of hour of trade, they managed to lift the market back up and end it in the green, or end it sort of in positive territory. So that was quite a big reversal. On the back of some Fed comments and that kind of stuff. So hopefully that sentiment continues throughout the course of this week. I am still very cautious of this market, thinking that, volatility is still elevated and sounding like a broken record of stuff that we've been talking about for months now. But it's still definitely not an easy market to be operating. There's all sorts of new news starting to surface as well. This monkeypox business was probably soon to start emerging into the more mainstream media, where we're starting to see reports of people saying that Russia has now sort of released monkeypox as a tactical sort of chemical weapon or biological weapon or whatever the case is. So those types of stories I think might surface a bit later in the week, and I think that we'd probably see elevated sort of anxiety around how markets are going to continue to trade. And also, as you mentioned, there's, of course, the interest rate narrative, right? I mean, we obviously saw interest rates going up locally last week. But this inflation, problem isn't really going away. So we're starting to see the ECB making some comments saying that they might start tapering down bond purchases faster than possible, or faster than planned, so that they can, do an interest rate hike, sooner rather than later. So those types of, I guess, let's just call it confusion, right? The market isn't really very sure of, what tomorrow holds, and that makes it a very elevated risk environment where we have high volatility and no real clear direction. So to see a bit of green on the board today, as at the start of the week, is very nice, but it is only Monday and much can happen throughout the course of the week.
Hey, well, take goodness where we find it, right? It's interesting to see conspiracy theories trickling in and impacting the markets. What about this? When we take a look at commodities, oil prices rising nearly 1% this morning. What's driving the move there?
It's interesting that you say that conspiracy theories are, 2 years ago, if you spoke you'd be a conspiracy theorist, and 2 years later, like with the whole COVID story, it turns out you'd be quite right on a number of things. But so yeah, okay. Anyway, so the oil price is bouncing a little bit. I mean, we had some comments over the weekend from OPEC saying that they don't see any need to raise production at this stage, or production output of oil. The US is sort of jumping up and down, saying they would really like OPEC to increase oil production. OPEC is turning around and saying, like, look, we see a balanced market. We see no reason to increase output capacity at this stage. And therefore, we have a slightly higher oil price. We also saw, sort of during the course of last week, higher than expected draws on inventories, so Brent crude oil inventories, as well as petrol and diesel inventories that they have in the US. There was a bigger draw on those than was anticipated, so their stockpiles are slightly smaller. That combined with what OPEC calls a balanced market, and obviously continued elevated fears around gas supply. We saw 2 countries in Europe actually agree to pay Russia in rubles for natural gas. It's either that or they have no natural gas to keep the electricity on, right? So it's a very interesting turnaround in that area where we see, all these European countries immediately sanction Russia and, jump up and down and, make all the noise. But when they run out of power, they very quickly succumb to the demands of Russia. And what's interesting here is that this, basically paying Russia in rubles for natural gas is going directly against the international sanctions that's been put against Russia. So there's a very interesting situation busy brewing there. And obviously that impacts the energy market and creates, again, uncertainty as well as supply constraints and concerns around do we have continuous supply of energy? And if we don't, where do we get it from? The other alternative is oil. Therefore, we see oil prices, natural gas prices up. Interestingly enough, though, oil is currently trading sort of just under $114 a barrel, which has been quite a strong resistance level over the last couple of weeks. Sort of since the beginning of, or mid-April, beginning of April, we saw that this $114, $115 level does offer a bit of resistance. Then it sort of trades back down to $100. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we breach up above $115. If we do, we probably are in for slightly higher oil prices over the next 2 or 3 months, maybe even as high as $130 a barrel.
It just doesn't end. Let's take a look at company news. Barloworld has posted interim results for the 6 months ending 31 March 2022. How did they fare?
I'll be honest, I still am to look at, in great detail at the Barloworld results. I haven't yet had the time, but a bit confusing, to tell you the truth. Group revenue down by some 23.2 billion rand. However, operating profit up by 2.8 billion rand. So from a headline earnings perspective, things are going well. There's some discontinued operations that they sort of essentially got rid of. And that kind of restructuring activity that they've done seems to be paying off. Even though revenue is down, margins are higher, profitability is up. They've also increased their dividend, which is relatively good. Dividend is 165 cents per ordinary share versus the first half of last year, which was 137 cents. So on the surface, it looks really good, I guess. I really haven't had the opportunity yet to really dig into exactly what the details are. The market, not so happy though. I'll say this though, the market is very quiet. By around 11:30, we'd only traded, or by lunchtime, we'd only traded something like 3.8 billion rands worth of transactions for the day. So that is a slow day. Liquidity is another big concern for both local and international markets at this stage. In any case, so the market's not really responded extremely positively to it. Barloworld is in fact down 2 1/3% at this stage. So it seems that the market was maybe anticipating a bit more. But as I say, I haven't really had the opportunity to go and look at great detail at the results.
No worries. Let's take a look at news coming out from Steinhoff. So they plan to appeal the Western Cape High Court's ruling that the firm supplies Diesel Blackstar and Amapongane with a copy of the PwC report. It's not over for the embattled company, is it?
Yeah, I guess not. And I don't. Obviously, they're trying. Why don't you want the information to be public? There are millions, tons and tons of shareholders that have been disadvantaged here. Just let us see the stuff, man. I don't understand why they. Obviously, there's criminal cases and all sorts of stuff happening here. This was large-scale fraud. Lots of people lost a lot of money. There was a ruling now that Steinhoff has to sort of pay back shareholders, affected shareholders in a big class action suit, an amount of money. But compared to the amount of money that was lost, it's not really. As a shareholder, you don't really recover much, right? You get sort of cents on the rand to what your investment was. So at the very least, I think we need to be able to see the analysis of these sort of forensic accounting or forensic auditing reports to see exactly how these guys did it and where did all the money go, right? And how much were they lying to us for how long is what we'd really like to know. Of course, they're going to appeal it. I'm not a legal professional, so I don't know. But I think I speak for quite a few people when I say I'm really hopeful that they lose the appeal and that we get to see those reports.
Petri Redelinghuys of Herenya Capital, always good to see you. Thank you for that update.